Okay, Prashanth, thank you so much for joining again. Usually I start by asking this one question that back in your high school days, uh, how was it? Were you confident back then that you're gonna end up in the gaming industry, that you'll be producer and founder of your own gaming studio 10 years down the lane, or or the plan completely different? What was in your head when you were coming out of your high school?
Right. I think I was like your average student. I was never really good at academics. I always did enjoy playing video games, and I think video games was a great escape. It was perhaps, the way that I found most entertainment, and I connected with it. I mean, of course, like everybody else in this industry. So that's something I always enjoyed, but I think we never really thought about having a career in gaming or especially as a game developer. Never thought it was possible. So never even considered it. Just knew that, I enjoyed playing games. So most of, I guess, my life has been about just being a gamer and just consuming all of that content. And I think it was, I just never knew where I would fit in. Like everyone would ask, are you going to be a doctor or an engineer or whatever. But I always never had an answer because I never really knew what I wanted to be. And then I think later when I got this opportunity to join, Game Institute, that's when it kind of hit me that, hey, I already enjoy playing games. What if I tried this industry? The place we went to, it was really cool. It kind of really it appealed to us, the whole studio vibe. And I thought, this is what perhaps I was meant to be doing.
Got it. Okay, understood. So, just tell me about your experience in the institute. And firstly, there were not a lot of institutes helping people build a career in games, and any specific career in gaming, for gaming industry. Like, how did you find it? How did you circle down, and what gave you confidence that yes, this is what you want to do?
Sure. So I think I just finished my 12th, and all my friends were, running up to figure out which engineering college they were going to get in, how their rank was. And they were all like, 3-digit, 4-digit rank people. And I was like 5-digit, 50,000 rank. I was
Okay.
not really going to get into any good engineering college. So, but at the same time, I had one of my friend who was very passionate about games as well. And he always knew he wanted to be in the gaming industry. And he was like, I'm going to go check out this institute. And like you rightly pointed out, Piyush, there still, even to this day, aren't many institutes. And that's a shame.
Yep.
But, like this was back in 2009 is when I joined it. And just I went along with my friend, saw this institute, and it had this great studio vibe. Just walk in, there are posters of like games everywhere, and overall the vibe is really nice. It doesn't look or feel like any college that I had ever seen. Dual monitor setup, people just sketching on Vacoms, and people playing on the Xbox. And I even saw like one of the classes where they were teaching sketching, and I thought, this is by far the most unexpected, interesting institute experience. All these things I'd only heard of like maybe in institutes abroad. And when I saw that, I genuinely got excited. And my next question was, where do I sign up, and what are the courses? Like I had zero idea, because back in 2009, I don't think anyone knew what a career in gaming looked like.
Yep. And where was this institute based? Which city?
It's in Bangalore, and
Okay.
it used to be called the Asian Institute of Gaming and Animation. And now I believe they offer more services, not specific, not limited only to gaming, but they're now called Asian Institute of Design.
Okay.
It's
Got
in
it.
Bangalore, and they still have some courses with regards to game development.
Okay. Understood. Cool. So, I'm assuming that if your parents weren't too liberal, it would have been a little difficult to convince them ki I'm not gonna do a regular BTech in computer science, but I'm gonna go for this. So how was that experience, and how were you able to convince them?
So I think I like it's 100% true. I think convincing family that maybe now it's a little bit easier, but
Mm.
definitely back then, people I guess had this. I mean, parents I guess are always concerned for their children, and
Yep.
they always think perhaps they're pursuing a maybe they're wasting time or something like that. But
Mm.
I think that was a little bit tough convincing my parents, but I think I was a bit fortunate that my parents
Mm.
were pretty understanding. Maybe not so much my extended family, who were trying to tell my parents that he's wasting his life. He can be a good accountant.
Oh.
So what are you doing? You guys are like spoiling his future.
Mm.
But I think fortunately my parents were like, they just managed it and they were like, it's fine. We believe he'll figure it out, although I didn't have that confidence, but I knew
Mm.
that they knew that I enjoyed games. So I
Mm.
think it's good when parents are also understanding that, look, they have to follow their passion, otherwise you can't convince them to be happy doing something they're not.
Right. So, like you said that it, I definitely, agree to that, that it's way easier to make your parents understand now, but it's still not that easy. So
Yes.
we see these cases on regular basis where people who want to learn game dev, they come to us and then they be like we have done 4 years of degree, we still don't have a job. Now it's very difficult for us to convince our parents that we want to do another course, and that's gonna land us a job, right? So a, people are not confident themselves. B, it's difficult for them to still convince their parents. So it's still a taboo, I would say, that people still think that they can play games and game is just for entertainment, but it's difficult for a lot of people to still comprehend that there are people who have serious jobs who are building those games, right? Like they actually have a similar kind of a job, like a software engineer who's shipping a code for some boring project. So there's a similar kind of programmer sitting somewhere who's building your game as well, right? So yeah, that is one problem. But yeah, after you pursued your program from that institute, like did you get job opportunity, or how was it? Like how did you get your break into the industry?
Right. I think that way the course that I took, it was a 3D art course.
Huh.
And even though I learned it, I think I was pretty bad at it. I don't think I
Okay.
was any good as an artist.
Okay.
And I guess it was a very humbling experience because I knew the tools. I got whatever education everybody else at the course got, but I think I was lacking the passion for the art.
Hmm.
But still, I suppose like that was much like 4 5 years down the line as a 3D artist is when I figured
Hmm.
it out. But after
Hmm.
the institute was done, I guess I had all the basics, and the course was designed in a way that you would have some output that would
Hmm.
demonstrate your technical capabilities as a 3D artist. So I managed to get a job at this company called Atman Software, and
Hmm.
we didn't get to work on a game, even though we wanted to, but we did a lot of cool things with architectural visualization. The company had its own custom in-house engine, and that was developed by mainly, of course, the programmer, but uh, he would also get a lot of us to kind of help contribute to make sure performance wise, how much can we push, what can we do, what workflows can we do to like make the artist's job easier when we need to like import these massive 3D assets like huge buildings and a lot of like props. So
Hmm.
got a lot of exposure into how engines work, but
Hmm.
I think till I actually managed to start the studio with a bunch of my friends. I don't think I've ever officially been in the games industry. So it's only taken me like 10 years or 11
Hmm.
years to get my final break. And for
Hmm.
that, we had to start our own studio.
Okay.
So that's a bit ironic, I know, but
Yes.
there's still hope for people who are like doing completely something else. But I think
Hmm.
that's the great thing about the games industry is
Hmm.
that it doesn't care what you did, what you studied. No one will judge you, no one will disqualify you. I think even if you're a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, if you find your passion in it and you think, you want to do it, I think there's an opportunity and people will be welcoming. That's a great thing. And the other great thing about making games is it's art meeting science, and
Hmm.
that's such a great place to be in, because not only do you get to tell cool stories, you get to have people enjoy things and
Hmm.
experience things. So yeah, it's obviously a lot of fun.
Got it. So, after you were done with admin softwares, I see your next stint was at Real World One, and that was again as a 3D artist itself, right? So,
Yeah.
3D artist and then art coordinator. I think you were managing a bunch of folks as well. So, tell us a little about that. Like, how was it, and
uh,
difference
yeah.
between the two companies as well.
Absolutely. So Atman Software, it was a close-knit team of developers. I mean, of all of us, like we were about 5 people. So the experience was completely different. We were encouraged to think differently. We were encouraged to not be limited in how we want to solve a problem. We were also, we got a lot of exposure into how discipline works, how each person, needs to uh, find their passion to be able to dedicate and work on something,
Hmm.
even though it might take a long time.
Hmm.
But it was essentially a small studio vibe. Everyone knew each other. Everyone's always
Hmm.
talking to each other. So I worked there for 3.5 years. So my experience was very limited and biased, because it was just limited to like 4 other people that I had to work with. And of
Hmm.
course, all of us got along very well and all of that. But then eventually, when I moved on to Real World One, uh, I guess, everything I thought about a job was like completely changed,
Oh.
uh, because it was like a corporate, like
Oh.
it's a multinational company, and they wanted to start an AR VR team in India,
Okay.
because they knew there's a lot of talent here, and they knew that the cost arbitrage opportunity, they could leverage that, because they had a lot of connections in the lab and pharmaceutical industries. So they wanted
Hmm.
to set up here, and luckily I was one of the earlier people who joined, and I built a good rapport with the German team, and that's when I think I started realizing that I could be more than just the artist, and that's
Hmm.
when I kind of started enjoying a lot of the planning, managerial, coordination tasks, because
Hmm.
I guess that's something I've always had, is I've been able to talk to people and like help them
Hmm.
in a way that they can like I guess get the best out of them. And I guess I always like to know a little bit of everything. So I'm the jack of all, but master of none. So that's something I'm comfortable with. But I know it's not good for everyone. But also, if that is somebody's, if that's what they're comfortable with, I would definitely resonate with that.
Got it. So, was this the time or this company the time where you decided to transition out of art? Because I saw your next role was more towards project coordination and then eventually, production part. What you're currently also doing at Brewed Games.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
Yeah.
just tell us about
So
that transition.
absolutely. So I think this is where it became very clear to me that if I were to continue as a 3D artist, then I'd not have a job for long. But that being said, I guess I had other skills that I could contribute to the team, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm done with specializing, and now I want to know more about how to work with teams, how to help support them, how to guide them, and just how to achieve bigger things that you can do with a team rather than what I could do just as an individual. And that's how the transition happened. And I didn't know this. I wish someone in 2009 had come and told me there is also this other role called production, that
Hmm.
you could rather spend your time doing that. But that being said, I think any person who is in any kind of team lead role or leadership in general or managerial role, I think they all should have a solid understanding of the technical part,
Hmm.
because you can build a good honest rapport with your team. And
Hmm.
it's not just like, hey, I said you should do it, so you should do it. You kind of understand the struggles that each person in a technical role has, and you kind of respect the challenges that they have, and you can help build it together.
Hmm.
I think that's the role of a producer, is not to tell people what to do, but to help the team figure out what has to be done. And
Hmm.
that's what, should be driving the whole production process.
Got it. The other day, I think 2 days ago, I was also talking to another producer who's been a producer in couple of companies, gaming studios, like a AAA studio as well. And now he's also building his own startup. So one question I even had with him, but I forgot to ask him, and same question I have with you. Like uh, two questions basically. One, uh, a lot of people confuse art with design. So, game art and game design, these two roles. And then, thirdly, how different is a producer's role from that of a project manager's role or a product manager's role? So, is it same? Is it completely different? There's a thin line. How is it?
Okay, so I think I'll take it one question at a time. Game art and game design, definitely, I guess they're like, I guess why people would have that confusion, but
Hmm.
they're as far away as the North Pole and the South Pole are.
Right. Right.
Of course, game design has to be the foundation. You
Hmm.
can have a bunch of people, artists, programmers, animators. You can tell each of them what to do in isolation, but
Hmm.
when it all comes together, if it's not built on strong game design
Hmm.
foundation, it's not going to mean much. It's not going to lead to a good experience. Whereas with game design it is designing the fun, and what is the experience that the player is going to have. And this is
Hmm.
not limited to the mechanics of the game,
Okay.
but everything that the player is going to experience is going to be somehow going back to what the game design for the game itself would be. And
Hmm.
game art, of course, it is more focused on the visual aspects.
Hmm.
You do have different parts in game art. You have the 2D game art, you have 3D game art, and of course, you have the UI, all these parts, as in the visual assets. Of course,
Hmm.
UI, user experience, and the user interface stuff is completely different. But
Hmm.
2D art and 3D art, it is what the player sees,
Hmm.
but game design is what the player feels. I suppose that's the simplest way of like making like a good distinction between the two.
Hmm.
So
Understood.
the second question that you had was, how is the role of a producer different from that of a project manager or a product
Product
manager?
manager. Yep. Yep.
So I suppose it really comes down to how what industry we are talking in and what is the
Hmm.
size of the company.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
could, like, as the company becomes bigger, you can
Hmm.
have individual people doing very specific specialized roles.
Right.
So if we see companies like Zynga
Hmm.
or any of those bigger companies, they
Hmm.
would have specific people who are experts at that particular thing, and
Hmm.
that is their complete job responsibility, is to just optimize and make that one particular either couple of features in a game or something like that to keep working on that to
mm,
to reach the business objectives. So I think
mm,
that's what a product manager does. Of
mm,
course, I my opinion may be completely wrong.
mm,
I hope I don't say it too wrong to people. But I can definitely say more on project managers and like probably producers. Project managers, I guess again it comes down to whether they're in the games industry. There are a lot of common overlap of responsibilities that a producer would have with a project manager, but the producer would also have a lot more responsibility
mm,
because a project manager is kind of given a lot of information by either a product manager or the
mm,
producer on what the
mm,
objectives are, and the project manager has to get all those things done.
mm,
That said, it's still important and it's not easy to make sure all of that happens. But I
mm,
think producers and product managers they need a lot more visibility. They need to know different departments because they're kind of gelling and making all the stakeholders.
mm,
So if you're running a game studio, you have your business objectives, you have your
mm,
game objectives, you have your
mm,
administrative things, and you have your teams. Each team has their own objective.
mm,
Perhaps for the code, for the development team, it is to make
mm,
sure that your code is scalable, the systems are
mm,
built on good
mm,
principles, performance optimization. So each team has technical goals that they need to reach that would
mm,
satisfy them and they would feel like they've achieved something. But
mm,
for the production team or for the producers, I guess it is to make sure all of those things are happening. You're providing the best opportunities to everyone to make sure they're able to contribute
mm,
and make sure that the end product, which is the game, is as good as it can be. But
mm,
at the same time, you can keep polishing something for 10 years. I'm
mm,
sure it will be really good, but then, you also have to balance out the three constraints,
mm,
which is quality, time, and cost. So
mm.
that's also, I think, and this is, I think, something all three of the roles you mentioned would always be wondering
Right.
what task is worth how much time and what is
Mm,
the bare minimum quality it needs to hit, and then
mm,
how to optimize the three constraints. That is something I
mm,
think all three roles. So I guess in short there's a lot of common overlap, but
yep.
also I think product managers are very specialized and specific to a particular game and perhaps some features about it.
Mm,
The producer, again, if it's a bigger studio, perhaps they would again
mm,
be segregated into specific parts. But
mm,
perhaps at smaller studios, at indie studios, I think the producer role is what is most prevalent, and they have a lot of
right.
different things to do as well.
Yep. Yep. Got it. Understood. So, in your case, like you transitioned from art role to a production role, right? I have seen a lot of people taking their career trajectory where they started as a QA or a tester, and then they transition into a production role, right? So, uh, in other industries, if you join in as a QA in a service-based company, let's say like a Wipro or TCS of the world, so they would probably climb the ladder and become a senior QA, become a team lead to QA, handling bunch of QAs. And if they want to transition, like they'll have to take a pay cut and then maybe
Start from scratch.
their upscale, learn programming, and then become a developer, SD1, 2, or something like that. But here, like I feel that this is special use case in the gaming industry where people can transition into a production role. So how was that journey for you coming in from a art background, and how was that skill set further usable for you when you joined a production role?
Right. And yeah, your observation about that specific thing, it's very true. I think it's
Mm,
something I've also always wondered about. And I
mm,
guess in the games industry, when you're in QA, you get exposed to a lot of what
Mm,
keeps the game ticking, and
mm,
you start thinking of all different scenarios, and you
mm,
start understanding how each team's output is working with everything else. So I suppose you get a very good idea, and
mm,
you can then, instead of like with QA, a lot of people have to deal with it after the fact, after things have been built. And maybe this going into production gives them an opportunity of being involved earlier on in the process, so that they
mm,
can help, plan things a lot better.
mm.
And the question you asked about how my journey has been, I think
Yep.
it's been really interesting,
Mm,
because when I'm with the 3D team, when I'm
mm,
helping plan, I can get a very good sense of it.
mm,
Also, I suppose there's some part of me that would feel like would want to still do the art part to some small tasks or whatever.
mm,
It's
mm,
nice because it keeps you grounded,
mm,
knowing how difficult things are, and
mm,
it helps like understand different departments,
mm,
that you like. I guess as a producer you always need to be curious, you
mm,
need to be ready to learn uh, the basics of everything else. I think
mm,
that is the most fun part about being a producer, and
mm,
me having a good idea of 3D art, I think gives me a bit of a unique perspective into it. I suppose
mm.
it's the same for other people who had their own technical expertise in coding or perhaps
Right.
something else, and then they came into production.
Mm. Got it. Cool. So, okay. So now coming to Brood Games. So what's up there, and how has that been so far? I think more than 2 years already.
Yeah.
How is
Yeah.
it going?
Oh, yeah. So we started our Studio Brewed games, and by the way, this is the logo of the game
Yep.
that we're working
Yep.
on.
Yep.
Shameless
Yep.
plug. So I think for the longest time, it's clear in my history that I loved games. I studied to be in games, but for whatever reason, never got a job in games.
Mm, mm,
And I think back in 2020, I think we were
mm,
all, me and my co-founders, we were pretty exhausted being dealing with middle management, and not really like, we felt like we never released anything substantial. We never
mm,
released something that would be like, hey, this is our work. Whether it's
mm,
good or bad, the audience should decide it
mm,
ultimately. But at least for our own thing, that loop never got completed. You think of something, then you build something, then you have to release it, and then you have to see what the world thinks about it, and then you go back, and then that's how the cycle needs to be. But for us, with everything we had done in the past companies, we felt like the last part was never enough. There was nobody telling us, is this good, is this bad? And apart from that, we did try to get into the games industry,
mm,
uh, and I think we had reached a point in our careers where we were too senior to
mm,
be getting into the entry level jobs.
mm,
And for being where we were 10, 11 years of the industry, we hadn't shipped a single game.
mm,
So, that really didn't work for us in our favor, because I think we applied to every company that's there in India,
okay.
at
Okay.
least the really good ones. But for whatever reason, we never even got a call back. Maybe we got a call back and an interview for maybe one company
Mm,
or two. But it was a reality check for us, saying, you don't have, for whatever reason, it did make us doubt ourselves. But ultimately, it was the best reason for us to
mm,
start the studio, because we
right.
thought, we kept waiting for people to start a studio that would make hardcore games in
Mm,
India. But I guess we just had to do it ourselves also. I mean, now there are a lot of really good studios in India that are doing some, really amazing hardcore games. that are in the works. But I think
Hmm.
when we started, there were maybe a handful, and we
Hmm.
finally decided that we'll just have to bite the bullet and try it ourselves. And it's been, yeah, 2 years, 4 months, and it's been a crazy journey.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's also super fun. uh, would definitely encourage people to first get into this industry, but also get into this industry and try to find like-minded people that you
Hmm.
can work with. And I think that is the most fun part about
Hmm.
making games, is doing it with people you enjoy collaborating with and seeing
Hmm.
how you can build something together. That
Hmm.
is, I think, the most appealing part of
Hmm.
having a game studio.
Got it. So, the question was that okay. So, coming zooming out from here and coming
Yeah.
back to this classic Indian mentality. So now you are like 6 years, 8 years into the industry, doing a good job. Your delivery head, AR/VR producer at this company, right? And suddenly you decide to quit and start a company of your own. So now stakeholders in your life, how are you able to uh, tell them that this is going to work, what you are doing right now, this is going to work? And firstly, how are you able to convince yourself, and what gave you that confidence ki this is going to work?
Uh, so I think yeah, I mean, I think again, I was definitely fortunate enough that I have parents who would understand, and they
Hmm.
knew that I was pretty frustrated with my career, and they could feel that is just not happy doing so. Whatever difficulties that everyone has to deal with, my parents were just like, okay, you take a year, you figure it out, but
Hmm.
of course, give it your best. It's not
Hmm.
something where, so that way they were very encouraging. And I
Hmm.
think I was also lucky enough that I also had my co-founders who were also equally frustrated in their own roles. And we just, I think, one of the other things is our programmer was pretty confident that
Hmm.
because he had worked a lot on Unity and Unreal, and
Hmm.
he was looking at a lot of games, and he's like, we can attempt to build it. And that itself, I think, like, if you'd asked me any time in my life before 2020 that would you want to start a like studio of your own, I would have laughed and I would have been like, no, that's not, I'm not foolish enough to do that. And
Okay.
I think, you have to be frustrated enough in life that you have to try something crazy. And I think,
Hmm.
like, I wouldn't encourage people to do things because it's crazy, but when you reach that stage in your life where you feel like your career is going nowhere and your passion left unfulfilled, and you feel like you're not doing justice to the
Hmm.
opportunities that you've gotten.
Hmm.
And I think we were all in that stage at that point. And explaining to the stakeholders, again, I didn't have to convince a lot of people, but mainly for my parents, I had to, but then they were supportive throughout all of that. So that always made sure, and that helped all of us, that our families were able to take the hit of us not having a salary. So
Hmm.
they supported us completely. And we also, like, our way of showing that is to make sure we're giving our best at the company. And luckily we had enough people, so we're four co-founders, so each of us brings a different skill set and a different perspective. And I guess we've kind of figured, like, we've been navigating in the dark till now, but I think we have a good idea, and we know what we need to do to make
Hmm.
sure that this studio can do some good things.
Got it. So would you like to mention your co-founders here? Like, and how long have they been with you with this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So since I take care of production,
Hmm.
I have three other co-founders, and that's Yashasvi, Naveen, and Mahesh. and Yashasvi is our programmer. So he's just one guy, but he keeps developing all the things that we need, building all the systems. And of course, Naveen is our main 3D technical artist and environment artist. So he makes sure that performance